Welcome. We are so happy that you have decided to join us today for one of our first series in our webinar, Teachers Teaching. Teaching teachers with technology, survive to thrive. And so we are very excited. We have several people here today that's going to help us with our conversation, and we're going to be open to questions. And so make sure that you utilize the chat and utilize the question and answer section to put in any questions that you may have as we go through our conversation. We have Dr. Rick Furtick here with us today from Kent State University. Also, we have Eric Ling, who teaches at Cuyahoga Valley Christian Academy. And we have Lucille Esposito, who is the Consulting Education Initiative Grant Program Manager at the GAR Foundation. And my name is Angela Harper, and I'm the principal at Mason Community Learning Center, which is an Akron public school. And so today we are here to talk about some of the things that we've been going through as educators from spring of last year to even now with our remote learning and distance learning, and just how things are so different now with being online, or we have some schools or some districts who are even hybrid, where kids are online and learning from home and also going into the building. And so I'm excited to have this conversation. And I'm going to start off with asking Dr. Rick, what are one or two things that surprised you about this blended online distance learning movement that we've been in thus far?
Yeah, so I'd say there are a couple things that surprised me. The first one's a little bit of a doozy, so you're gonna have to go with me here. I'm surprised how surprised people were about K-12 online and blended instruction. And what I mean by that is, I would have people come up to me in March and go, "Hey Rick, have you heard about this brand new thing called K-12 online and blended instruction?" And I would go, "You mean the thing we've been studying since 1995? It's been around for 25 years." And people were just, they could not believe that it had been around that long. And I think that's an important surprise. Actually, if you put up slide 1, because we've had so much technology around the K-12 online and blended instruction around for so long, we've actually had 25 years of research on this. And I don't expect everybody to read every single one of these, but I put that slide up there to essentially show you all the areas of research that exist on kind of best practices in K-12 online and blended instruction. And so when I had all these schools kind of say to me, "Oh, well, this is new, and how do we prepare? Or how do we do professional development in these areas? Because we've never done this before," I kind of go, "Well, wait a minute, yes, we have." And so I think these become really, really good and interesting resources. I think the second thing that surprised me was how much teachers matter. Now, before you two get mad at me, and I know teachers matter. Okay? So let me try to clarify that a little bit. If you hadn't put slide 2 up for me. So we have years and years of research on how important teachers are. And so, for instance, National Bureau of Economic Research examined various impacts that teachers have. And so, for instance, we know that if we have either what we'll call a highly qualified or a highly effective teacher, a bunch of things happen. For instance, we instantly get better test scores. Our high school graduates are much more likely to go to college. We have students who will graduate high school and have a higher earning salary. And then the opposite is true. We have a decrease in areas. For instance, we have decrease in numbers of teen pregnancy with highly effective and highly qualified teachers. So we've known that. That's not what surprises me. We also, if you go to slide 3, we also know that teachers always haven't felt that value. So even though we know their value, they haven't always felt that. A recent study showed that only 26% of teachers actually felt valued by society. Now, the good news for us is a couple things. One is that 91% of them still were happy that they became a teacher, which is good. And then if you go to slide 4, we recently actually did a study and asking teachers about, and parents, what's your favorite meme from COVID? And the number one meme was this idea that, wow, we are definitely not paying our teachers enough money for everything that we've had to go through. So, okay, so yeah, thank you for those slides. So I am surprised by, I said the impact of teachers, but here's what I mean when I say that. So we started looking at data for spring and for fall, and what we found is, I'm going to give you two groups of teachers. The first group basically said to their students, this is horrible. We can't believe we have to go through this. This is just, we just can't wait till this is over. This is just terrible. And the second group of teachers said, this is hard. We understand. It's different, but it's going to be okay. And not only is it going to be okay, but we're going to actually do some things that we didn't get a chance to do when we were back in our traditional means. And so what ended up happening, and I know you can already guess what happened, is in the first group, which I'll call the negative group, their students had significantly poorer outcomes than what I will call the positive group. And you get to pick the outcomes. If you want to talk, or the metrics, if you want to talk about test scores, if you want to talk about engagement in class, if you want to talk about attendance, whatever it was, we had significantly better outcomes. And where that leads to me, and then I'm ending with my surprise here, where that leads to me, if you put up slide 5 for me, is that how can we then encourage our teachers? How can we actually, if belief in themselves is so important, because Rick, you put up that list of all these skills that they need, but they're not prepared for that. And what I do when I work with teachers is I say, okay, go back to the big things that we know about highly effective, highly qualified online teachers. Being a good communicator, understanding pedagogy, understanding classroom management. That's not new, right? I mean, teachers know how to do those things. So thank you for that slide. So I think the best thing that we can do is capitalize on that and say, we have to kind of reinstill that belief that yes, I'm a little ecclesiastical about this. There's nothing new under the sun. There's obviously nuances in how we teach online or in blended formats, but at the end of the day, the teachers are still doing the kinds of things that they need to do. So do you agree? I mean, have you seen that? I mean, the belief structure, or how do you encourage belief in your colleagues?
I agree with you. I have seen that when we feel more confident in what we can do, then we actually do a better job at doing it. And one of the things that we did, I know with Akron Public Schools, is if you did not feel competent enough to transition into the online environment, we provided the professional development even before we began the school year, with making sure that we were equipped with the tools. And so we have the strategies, but then how do we take those strategies and put them in this online environment? And so, being able to have the tools and the knowledge behind what's going to be effective within this online environment was going to be so important. And so we had a series of professional development that teachers were able to learn different types of tools that they could use when providing instruction online. So it definitely made a big difference, them having the competence and the knowledge provided that confidence for them when they were able to deliver online instruction.
And would you say, I think people sometimes look at PE as like beginning of school year and that's it, and that's all they get. And if they didn't do it, it was too late. But I think we saw evidence that it was like, you can start at any point in time. It's never too late. Is that
you can
fair?
Start at any point in time, and then not only, do we do it at the beginning of the year, but it's ongoing. Okay. And so that's the one thing about being an educator.
Yeah.
We write this in our, in college, you have to write your statement of belief, or your philosophy. Sure. And that's one thing that everybody puts, is that it's forever. Like we're lifelong learners. Yeah. So I'm sure that's in everybody's paper, that they are a lifelong, if you are an educator, then you are a lifelong learner. That's and right. So we never know everything, and time changes, technology changes, our children change. So we're constantly learning so that we can meet the needs of the children that we're serving. So absolutely, it's ongoing.
Yeah, I think that's incredible. That kind of, I'll piggyback on that. I think you identified it. One of the greatest crises that I saw was a crisis of confidence, right? Even myself, I feel like, I'm a 13-year teacher. I feel like in year 13, I walked out of class about 70% of the time. I felt really good about what happened. And that, in 30% of the time, I could deal with that and fix it. When I went to online, I felt good about 30% of the time, maybe 25% of the time. And so I, who think of myself as a confident teacher, had a crisis of confidence. And so I kind of plugged into two main things, in addition to getting great professional development from my administration here, but from a teacher perspective, I plugged into the competency of my colleagues.
Absolutely.
Like I have the ability to be confident because I know I have a group of people around me that, like you said, are experts in all of those categories of what makes a great, excellent teacher. And so we created organically a collaborative community where we started working with each other. So now when I go to my students, I have a lot more confidence because it's not Mr. Ling, it's CVCA, it's colleagues beyond that, colleagues from GAR and other schools that kind of lent me their competency. And so I feel like I can execute. The other thing I think as teachers, we often forfeit, and you guys can speak on this too, we forfeit the power of our words often. We forget how important it is to speak positivity to other people.
Yes.
And I think we see that with our students for sure, but we also forfeit that for each other. We are, it's a fiercely independent job sometimes being an educator. You feel like you're in your own sort of silo and fiefdom. But if we are willing to go and encourage one another, even if it's an email or a video conference, I know from encouragement others gave me, being intentional about encouraging others, my confidence grew. And then I was able to switch my mindset. And then my colleagues would catch me if I was dropping into the negative. I feel like that's very fluid.
Yes.
Some days I'm like, guys, I don't know how we're getting through this. So they catch me and kind of nudge me back in the right direction. So to me, that's my source in addition to having great professional development.
And I feel like, if we look at this as, this, what I always call is like this 80-20, right? So if we look at what is made up of K-12 face-to-face education, and we look at kind of what goes online, it's not, you have zero knowledge here, and 100% here, or zero here, 100%. It's really 80% overlap between them. So if you struggle or I struggle, it's not necessarily the technology I'm struggling with, it's a certain pedagogical concept in that. And so how can I come to you and say, hey, I'm really struggling with classroom management or with engagement or with communication or with this, rather than saying I'm struggling hitting, Alt Control F7 to do something. Right,
absolutely. Well, I think we really kind of hit on the importance of the teacher and the educator, and especially when it comes to the mental health of the educator. And that connects right to the mental health of the kids and how important that is. So Rick, I'd love to hear about what the research has to say about kids and the importance of supporting their mental health.
Yeah, so I'm gonna give you a little bit of bad news and a little bit of good news. I'll try to do more good news than bad news. So,
Please.
We need it. So the bad news is, as you might have guessed, is that there were a lot of mental health issues, pre-K all the way to post-secondary graduate education. There were a lot of mental health crises. Kids were at home. Parent situations were changing and evolving. And there were a lot of struggles. Now, the good news, let me jump right into the good news, is there have been a lot of questions asked about, this social distancing and how is that going to impact folks growing up, and are there any mitigating factors? And the good news is there are mitigating factors. The mitigating factors are the parents and the teachers. And so they've done some really early research that says, if a parent can get really involved or a teacher can get really involved in the lives of their students, that becomes a mitigating factor for some of the social emotional support that they've lost in due to COVID. So I was at a conference in this fall, and I asked a group of teacher educators, both those who do professional development for in-service and those who do pre-service teacher development, what's the one thing that we need in teacher education, especially like what lessons should we have learned? And I will tell you, almost, I think the number one answer was this idea of social emotional learning. It's that we haven't done a good enough job of teaching our current and future teachers how to be fully engaged in social emotional learning. And if you pull up slide 6 for me, there is some actually really interesting work in the area of social emotional work. For anybody who hasn't seen Castle's work, I encourage people to go there, check out kind of the research behind what does it mean to, we all know the saying, nobody knows or cares what you know until they know that you care. But how do we actually engage in these things? And I'd actually like to jump right into some of the best practices that we've seen out of social emotional learning. And if you switch to slide 7, I'm going to use another word that has been very popular if you're looking in this area, which is called care pedagogy. And so some of the things that come out of care pedagogy include things like capitalizing on collaboration or friendship. So I've seen people do some really interesting things online with shared video conference scavenger hunts, encouraging the use of meeting reactions so that if you're in a blended or hybrid or completely online environment, you encourage kids to show, to share emoticons or to share memes or to share how they're feeling.
Right.
Engaging with parents, which we can again talk about ad nauseum. Appreciating cultural differences, sharing journal assignments, getting kids to write about their experiences and their feelings. And then one of the research-based ones that I found, the most interesting was creating engaging environments. If you want to help address a student's social emotional learning, creating boring lessons is not the way to do it. Lecturing at kids for 4 hours a day is not the way to do it. And so we have to be able to do that. So, okay, so what are some ideas? So if we look at slide 8, here's some really cool things that I saw teachers do. So the teacher on the left here is a middle school teacher who was really struggling with engagement on some of her online hybrid kids. And so every time they got a question right, she put a sticker on her face. And so now all of a sudden, all these kids got really excited about, could we actually fill up the teacher's face with stickers by the time the class was over? In the upper right, we had some of our elementary teachers who would start off every single day. We'll talk a little bit about consistency, but start off every single day saying, okay, Eric, it's your turn, show us something at home, or show, bring in like a show and tell and talk about it. And so kids started to feel like they were part of the environment. And then at the high school level, I saw some high school teachers. Now, obviously they did this more one-on-one. You could just Google mood meters, and they would actually have their students fill out mood meters so that they had a better pulse on how their students were feeling. And then the final thing I'll throw out on slide 9 is there's been some really interesting work done on what's now being called trauma-informed distance learning. And probably one of the most interesting ways to get at support for social emotional learning is supporting predictability. And so actually having consistency in the structure of that delivery. So that's what the research says, but is it right? I mean, how have you all seen kind of this social emotional aspect played out in your teaching?
Yeah, so to me, in-person instruction, there's a lot of intuitive connection between the teacher and the student. You can read the emotions on their face, even though now they have masks on, so it's a little harder to read the emotion on their face, becoming an eye reading expert. But you can read the emotion, you can move towards them, you can engage them, you can have sidebar conversations. And it's something that great teachers do really, really well and have learned how to support that. Even if they didn't know what it was called, they knew it was important. So to me, what I found, and I didn't do this organically, again, I plugged into the competency of my colleagues who are doing this really well, was to just be super intentional about connecting. I think to kind of put a more fine point on it, whatever that connection looks like. So something I did was I created an interest discussion. Discussion boards. Just, I started sharing my interests on there, things I thought were cool, things that I thought were funny. We were going through the pandemic, so like my pandemic hack list, how I'm hacking the pandemic, and then all the other students were invited to start sharing and were involved in that as well. And I also did a practice where I just sent each student an email, which I know seems incredibly overwhelming, but I did one a day. And it was like a few words, and it's plugging back into that idea of the power of your words as an instructor.
Yes.
And I just wanted to say like a couple of encouraging things, specific things, not copy and paste it, but reasons I valued them as a human, not necessarily as a student, but what I thought they brought to the table and why they mattered. And so doing those small little connections creates that engaging environment where, like you said, like they believe that you care.
Yeah.
And if they believe that you care beyond the content, then when these emotional crises come up, you're more likely to be somebody that they can bounce things off of. Then one more thing, just to jump on the predictability. I stumbled into this as well, but I did something really simple. I already have kind of how I build learning, and it's nothing new, it's pre-assessment. Then you give them the information, formative assessment, all that stuff that every teacher knows. But what I did in my learning system, my LMS, is I just numbered the assignments. And so it was like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It was such a simple change, but my students are like, what are we doing today? I'm like, we're doing 1 through 3.
Yeah.
And it's predictable. And then I made it, I don't know if your LMS system does this, but ours made it so that you could block all the other assignments until they unlock assignment 1. So they know assignment 1 is necessary.
Right.
It could be like you check that it's done, or you complete and turn it in lots of different ways, and then the next assignment's unlocked. So even students that are taken away from the classroom for whatever reason are able to get back in and plug in, create a predictability. And now we're blended right now, and I'm doing the same thing. I keep it numbered. So my students in my classroom love it because like you said, it's so predictable. They go on like, these are the 4 assignments we're doing today.
I don't think, I know teachers got this, but again, I don't think teachers realize how important they are. And in a world of so much confusion and chaos and this pandemic, and kids are, a lot of these, especially the younger kids, I mean, this has taken up a large percentage of their life so far, this
Oh
pandemic.
my goodness.
And the one consistent thing they have in their life is their teacher.
Right.
And the more that the teacher can make that consistent, the practice is consistent, it becomes a routine for them, and there's comfort in that routine. Do you find that as well?
Absolutely. I feel like teachers are superheroes.
Yeah.
I mean, and there is an
Yes.
art to teaching, and I tell my teachers, everybody can't do what you do.
Yeah.
Everybody cannot do what you do. I was just looking online the other day, and one of my teachers wrote that she took 45 minutes planning something that would have probably taken her 10 minutes at school, because she would have had a copy or copy papers for the things that she needed to do.
Yeah.
But you think about the planning that goes, like we don't pay our teachers enough to do what they do. Because if you think about the planning that goes behind creating engaging assignments and the preparation to make sure things are set up the way they need to be like in our Google Classroom, just like you said, you number your assignments, you're hiding these assignments so that they can't, they don't get overwhelmed,
Right.
with the 20 things that you need them to do by the end of a semester, and you're hiding these things, and you're making sure that you have your screen set up for your success criteria and your learning intentions,
Yeah.
because you want to set the purpose for learning, but all these, you don't just do it, you're still thinking about the things you're doing. It's not something that happens naturally. So there's a lot of time and work that goes into these things. And social emotional learning is so important for the child, and it's also important for our adults too, that we're taking
Right.
care of ourselves,
Yeah.
our emotional well-being, because
Yeah.
it's going to be hard for us to take care of our children if we're not taking care of ourselves. And so I actually think that when we are implementing these things in the classroom, we're not only helping our kids, we're also helping ourselves too. And
Yeah.
so we do like a morning meeting.
Yeah.
And so within that morning meeting, that's part of our social emotional learning. And so our school counselor actually has put together different types of questions and lessons, like 5-minute lessons that they could do in the morning, right when kids enter. And so not even in the online environment, but we'd be doing this when we're face to face as well. Like you said, making those connections. That's how you're building relationships with students.
So
During these downtimes, we're not just talking about the things they need to know and be able to do.
Right.
Because honestly, kids aren't going to do what you need them to do unless they like you.
Yeah.
True.
And part of them liking you is building that relationship with them.
Yes.
I mean, you'll have kindergartners and first graders not turning their homework in because they don't like a teacher. And so they think that they're punishing the teacher, but
Right.
it's really, they're hurting themselves. But that's just how important it is that we are, doing these things. And so, you have things like the zones of regulation.
Yep.
And, like the meter that you had shown on that one slide, with the, did you say college students or high school students were doing that?
Yeah, mood meter.
Yeah, the mood meter.
Yeah.
And, you have Pear Deck that actually does that. When you first open up your Pear Deck, it asks the kids, how are you feeling today?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that's
Yes.
so
Sure, that's
important, like
awesome.
you said, to
Yes.
gauge where kids are and where they're feeling, so that you know how to actually interact with them. I'm not gonna push you too hard today, Eric, because, I know you're not in a good mood. So I'm not
Yeah.
gonna push you as hard as I probably would, because, I know that you're not in the right mental state,
Right.
right now.
Right.
And so I'm gonna work with you a little different.
Mhm.
And that, it's funny because, we psychologically, we talk about people hiding behind masks. And I know we can read, I know we're getting better at reading eyes, but a little bit, but people can even better hide behind masks. And I think something like the mood meter, and like you say, maybe you're, less difficult on Eric today because he's having a bad day. I mean, that's part of it, right?
Absolutely it is. So I love the whole social emotional learning piece, and I'm glad that it's coming out more and more, because it's so important. And so I know earlier, Dr. Fairdick, you talked about consistency and how important consistency was.
Yeah.
Could you talk more about the importance of consistency?
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to talk about just a couple things with consistency. But I just have to pause for a second and say, I love having conversations with you too for so many reasons. But what I love about this conversation is that the things we're talking about are not COVID. Okay, now we're done with COVID. We don't do these things anymore.
Right.
We're not talking about this technology intervention. We're talking about social emotional learning. We're talking about belief in teachers and working with support. So I think the value, when the Venice canals, when COVID hit and all of a sudden, you could see the canal bottoms, and there were some good things that were happening out of COVID.
Mhm.
And I think we've had a chance to re-examine education in a really positive and meaningful way, which I love. So thank you. So yeah, a couple of things I would say about the structure. If we go back to that, one is my worst favorite question of during COVID, people run up to me and they go, "What's the one or two technologies we need to buy?" We got to buy, so we got to buy our way out of this. What are the tools we need, right? And I think the answer is, I'm not going to give you an answer, right? Because a couple of reasons. I mean, one is that you and I are different. We're all different. Like what works for you may not work for me is part of the issue.
Yeah.
And then the other part of the issue is if you have a tool you use and I do and you do and Lucille does, and all of a sudden now I've got 75 tools I'm using. And research says, and I'd like to pick your brains on this one before I go to the second one, is I think we find that that's not really the best way to do it. If we can find a teacher and sustain their belief and their confidence in one or two tools, well, no, kids will get bored with that. No, they don't. That actually we have better success with just a couple tools than we do with a library box of 500 tools. Is that right? Is that
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that once you find that tool, like your go-to tool, you're going to be able to, whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish or mission you're trying to complete, you're going to be able to do it through this tool that you feel, you've have mastery with it.
Yes.
And so you're going to be able to manipulate and do more things with it because of the comfortable, the level that you have. And then also it creates a system of comfort for the student as well. So each day when I log on, if my teacher does Pear Deck, I know she does Pear Deck, but she's not going to have, I'm not going to have to go log on this site for Jamboard, then I'm going to have to go over here for quizzes, then I'm going to have to go over here for this. But it creates a level of consistency for the student and a level of comfort for the child. And it also decreases anxiety for everybody that's involved.
Yes.
So my anxiety level is I'm going to be cool and I'm going to be calm because I'm comfortable with my tool of choice.
Yeah, that's right.
That I go,
That's
and
right.
you may, decide to use, something, here and there, but you still have that one thing that you're consistent with using, and your children know that this is what Mr. Ling is going to do today. I know he's going to do this, and so I'm not going to be stressed.
Right.
I'm going to feel comfortable.
And
so there's comfort in consistency.
That's 100% it. It's all about finding the tool that unlocks the learning that you're looking to accomplish, right? And I think we sometimes even in a professional development session, I've been to a lot of technology professional developments, like here's 100 new tech items.
Yes.
And then if you're using one that you used to use, you feel like I must be doing it wrong.
Yes.
I'm not cutting edge, I'm not innovative. And it's so wrong. And I love that the research supports what I feel in my heart.
Yes.
That's my favorite part of this conversation, because I know it to be true that when I find a tool that really unlocks what I'm trying to do, like for example, one of my absolute favorites is Flipgrid. I don't know if you guys have used Flipgrid.
I like Flipgrid.
I love it because so many technology tools are about the teacher delivering and maybe the students like responding ones, but it's definitely teacher focused, teacher created, and Flipgrid just flips that on its back, and that's the learning that I try to do in my classroom. And they can do it from anywhere on any device. So I love that, and it's become a go-to. And sure, I get an eye roll when I'm like, okay, Flipgrid is like, come on. I didn't do my hair. And it's collaborative too. It unlocks a whole lot of the things I enjoy, So like you said, I've become an expert on it. I know how to coach them. I know how to help. They now know how to share their slides. And then I think just to piggyback on that, they become masters of that as well. And so now I see them using Flipgrid as a tool for other classes. I see them recognizing how to utilize it, and they're unlocking new tools.
Right.
And that's only going to make them better as they engage in the future and using technology to augment whatever it is that they're trying to do. It's not about the piece, it's about what you're able to accomplish with it. So,
Right.
yeah.
So I know I could go on for 3 more. How much time do I have? 3
We're
more
already,
hours?
yeah.
Okay, so I know we want to,
3.
I know we want to get to questions, but I do want to, you both have talked about kind of connecting with people and getting answers. And I know, we want to stick with 1 or 2 tools, but sometimes we need, like, how do we find out about new tools? And if there isn't professional development available right then and there, then how do we actually, kind of sustain and support our continued growth? How do we continue to be lifelong learners? And so if you could put slide 10 up for me, many people are familiar with this concept, but I just want to talk for a second about this idea of the networked educator. And I know that we all use, Instagram and Facebook and Twitter to share our favorite recipes, or to cheer on our football team, or to, show people what we ate last night or whatever. I think that's all great. But I think there's significant research out there that suggests that, a really good question to ask your colleagues and to push your colleagues is, how networked are you? And, are you using, your social media, your Twitter, your Instagram, your Facebook, your colleagues, Eric, to the point that you mentioned, to be able to get access and insight to new ideas. Because again, you're right, if a new technology is out there, you don't want to feel this, well, I use Flipgrid and you're telling me there's something new and therefore I must be old school, I have to get rid of it. No, that's not the point. But the point may be, and I think, Angela, you mentioned this, that maybe you're looking for that one extra thing that you want to do, and all of a sudden, in your network, somebody introduces something.
Right.
Or let's say you're a big, you're a big Google Drive fan, and all of a sudden someone posts something of a new way to do something in Google Drive. So I think this idea of being a networked educator can really support kind of this lifelong learning, this continued professional development. So I think that's the other piece. There's about 10 more things I could say about consistency, but but I think I'll pause there and maybe we'll take some time for questions. So
Yeah. So at this time, we'll kick it over to Lucille, and Lucille's going to take us through a guided Q&A. Hopefully, you guys have added your questions to the question and answer feature, and we're happy to take those at this time. So we'll do a little transition here, and then we'll take your questions.
yeah.
Well, first of all, every single time that I'm with these 3 wonderful educators, I learned something. Something that was said today was about social distancing, but Dr. Rick, at the beginning of the year, said to me, it's not social distancing, it's physical distancing. There's a big difference. We're still interacting with these kids that need so much. And we need it too, from them. But I have a real quick question. As we look at 21st century learners, we think, and I think this too, because I'm not obviously a 21st century learner, I'm learning. However, we think, and I think some teachers feel threatened by this too, that these kids really know what they're doing on the computer. What is science and the research saying about that? We make that assumption.
Yeah, and I want to hear how this actually plays out with you all in the classroom, because we assume that because our kids know how to TikTok, they know how to do stuff. But okay, so if you could pull up slide 15, I really enjoy Mark Krensky, nice guy. He wrote a book called "Don't Bother Me, Mom. I'm playing video games, but I'm learning." And he's the one that supposedly came up with this concept, although it's arguably came before him, called digital native. And although I love his work, I've told him this, that I've come to resent this word, because this idea that as a digital native, you multitask and parallel think, and I, as a digital immigrant, do everything sequentially, and I'm only lecture based. Again, I think that basically makes the argument that, oh, well, therefore they can TikTok, they can tweet, therefore they know how to learn with educational technologies. And if you switch to slide 16, I think what the research shows us is that that's absolutely nothing could be further from the truth.
Mhm.
And so, a recent study showed 83% of millennials sleep with their smartphones, yet 58% have poor skills in solving problems with technology. US in a international study actually finished dead last out of 19 countries of those tested for tech skills when it came to actually using technology to support their own learning. So I think that this idea of, oh, well, I'm afraid to use my technology or use technology in the classroom because they know so much more than I do, it's not true. I keep using this example, they may know how to TikTok, but it doesn't mean they know how to actually use the technology to support their learning. So that's what the international study says. Is that true? Like, is that what you're
That is
saying?
100% true.
Right on.
I have, like even with my low-level learners, students with multiple disabilities, they were inviting me to Google Meets. And so the teacher's like, well, how are they inviting you to a Google Meet and they don't know how to open up their math book on the, I was like, because we've
That's right.
taught them how to get into it. We've taught them the Google Meet. And so, like you said, so their phone, they're used to doing their phone, they're used to doing their iPad, they know how to do the PlayStation, they know how to use my credit card to order whatever they get on Fortnite, I don't even know what it is, but he uses it to buy something, they know how to do all that.
Yeah.
But we taught them how to do Flipgrid? Have we introduced it to them yet? Yeah. And yes, they will be able to learn it once we teach it to them, but they're not going to just naturally know how. They have to engage with it. They have to interact with it. Right. They have to do it more than one time, and then they're going to have that level of comfort. So right. They definitely have the potential and the ability to engage in new technology as it relates to educational things. Yeah. But we have to teach them, and we have to introduce it to them.
And I was just saying, just really quick, so outside of a teacher, being a highly qualified teacher, the one mitigating factor for student success, student orientation. And people go, well, what do you mean student orientation? Yeah, they know what they're doing. No, they don't. And so we actually take time and show them.
Right.
Mitigating factors.
Wow. Yeah, that's huge. To me, I feel like I know this, like I see it happen, and then I still make the assumption over and over again, as I teach seniors. Yeah. They know this stuff. Yeah. Mm-hmm. They know it. Like, okay, now go ahead and build a slide deck for me. Yeah. And then I start to see it. I'm like, oh, they don't know how to do this at all. Right. But then to your point, Angela, they are quick learners. Mm-hmm. Like they can jump on that. I think that's a part of growing up in this is they're not afraid to click on everything until they figure it out. Mm-hmm. And so they learn it quickly, but we do need to be intentional about instructing them. I think that's actually, it makes me, breaks my heart that we haven't taught them more about how to utilize technology. A stat that we're dead last. We've got some work to do on that.
Well, time management, organizational skills, being able to prioritize. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's about the technology, but it's also about technology enables us to do these things. Absolutely. If we know how to do these things.
I know you were saying earlier, some of these tools and these platforms that we're using for online learning have been here. Yes. Like Google Classroom has been around like forever. Yeah. But we haven't used it because we haven't had to use it. Yes. But it would have been a tool that could have enhanced the learning within the classroom if we were using. But I guess the good thing about having to move to online learning is that now we have so many tools that we are going to be able to utilize. And I think that it also has opened up a window of confidence for people to go out and even learn even more things now once we get back into the classrooms.
You are spot on, and if there are administrators in the audience or even teachers, I'm seeing again two groups, and I'm seeing the teachers that are going, oh, I just can't wait for this to be over, and I just go back to normal, and I see the teachers that go, this is not great, but there's some really good things that came out of this, and I can't wait to continue some of these things because now I've been forced to use it.
Right.
And as fellow teachers and administrators, we need to go to that first group and go, no, let us help you because we don't want, there's some good things that the technology enhanced learning that will come out or some good things.
Thank you. Most often in these webinars, we don't have commercial breaks, but this is the commercial break for today. And that's why I'm here. I'm a program manager, lucky to be the program manager for GAR for the EIG grant. grants and applications. And this year is the year to write, because we have come up with, and actually Eric has been helpful in helping me as an educator and a few other of our evaluation. Both of these wonderful educators are on the evaluation team for EIG, which is due February 19th. This year, it's only 7 questions, and we just ask you to tell your story. That's really what we're about. But what we want is that all of our students in Summit County, and this is a Summit County initiative, become smarter, stronger, and more vibrant. Because if that happens, the community, and these kids will stay in this community. As I say to those who are, and many of you out there I know are writing grants and writing our applications, that's what I'm here for, to help you. We will do it physically distanced, but we won't be socially distanced. We will create and look at all kinds of ideas, whether it's gardening, makerspace, whether it's learning about escape rooms and algebra, whether it's esports that are going to be coming in, VR, AR, and gaming that really links to learning in 21st century. This whole idea of what we wanted to do today was to say to you as educators, take a breath, enjoy the new, enjoy and learn from what you're doing. Social emotional learning is part of our grant. Looking at diversity and how wonderful it is part of our grant. And guess what? We're one of the very few foundations that has a person that I get to go out and work with you, and we come up with ideas. When do you get to sit and just talk about the work? Talk about, and both have written our grants, talk about what your students need. 2 questions I ask you. What are your needs? PD, what are your students' needs? And you don't have the wherewithal to do these things in the classroom or in a hybrid or a completely online setting. Who knows what next year is going to be like? These are for next year. We're hoping that a new normal is going to include the vaccine, et cetera, et cetera. But what we're here for today is to let you know you're not alone. We are here, we, the GAR Foundation, and the little teeny piece of $350,000 that I have, for you to come to us, $10,000 or $5,000, they are due 5 o'clock on February 19th. We got plenty of time because this 7-question application can be done, and we hope can be done in 2 hours. And that's what I'm here for. We see a question. Maybe we can go to that, and really just reach out to me, Lucille Esposito, give me a call. The information is there. There's a link to the application process, and we look forward to hearing from many of you.
No, that's great. So we have an excellent question about a student in an IEP that has struggles with verbal comprehension and in school use more hands-on approach. How do you do this in a tactile blend environment? I know you talked a little bit about some of your students. Do you have some examples you could give?
Well, one thing that we've done is we've actually sent home manipulatives with the students. The only thing about it is that they use them as toys and they end up losing them.
Yeah.
But I know that there are some online types of tools that we can go to help with our students with interacting and moving things around on the screen. But again, you're gonna have to provide time for them to play with it.
Yes.
And to practice it before you start trying to use it for instruction.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, we are ending in 4:45, correct?
Yes.
So this is the end. So it was a great question, and I'm sure we have other questions that came in the meantime. What's great is that this is just the first installment of this. So we're going to get to have more conversations. So what we would like you guys to do now is to commit to filling out a survey. Not only will that get you the CEUs, but also it'll give us tons of great feedback and especially topics that we want to cover because we don't have this all set out. We want to be responsive to teacher needs. So that survey will be emailed out to you, and that's going to be show up in their emails that they register with, I believe. So we'll email that out to you. Look for that email, and we'll make sure that we make that happen.
And finally, again, commercial, the grants are due Friday, February 19th. We always give you that last Monday, President's Day, and I'm willing to meet with you even on President's Day, 2/19 at 5 p.m. Please, if you have an idea, let's talk about it, because it's fun to talk about teaching and learning.
Absolutely.
Perfect. Thank you, everybody,
Thank
for
you,
coming.
everyone.
Really appreciate it.